Hello and welcome to the All About X-Men Comics podcast, where you'll find recaps and reviews of all the most recent X-Men comics, as well as previews for upcoming issues. Please keep in mind this will include spoilers and the kind of language that adult men use. I'm host Scorpio Moon, that guy you heard ranting and raving on TV about seeing Xavier's face in a grilled cheese sandwich, and hosting with me is...
Johnny Alpha, the guy that you hear ranting and raving about all these crappy-ass Days of Future Past trailers I keep seeing.
Skipping the movies and getting right into what we really care about, the comics, we're going to start off this week with All New X-Men number 23. So we're all on board the Guardians of the Galaxy ship, and having Scott be the last one to wake up after being teleported onto it is an easy way to make him the fish-out-of-water character to explain everything to.
Yeah, and I mean, there was just so many fun exchanges in this. Allusions to which X-Men would actually make the best Disney princess. Oh, man. Iceman is just too unreal sometimes.
Yeah, he wants to be a pretty princess. He is my favorite character in this book, I think. Even though they've added female Wolverine.
Right, yeah, the Wilf.
But yeah, so we go through a couple pages of back and forth and stuff like that. Totally worth it for that right there alone. And then when the Shi'ar attack the ship, everyone gets into battle positions until they get bailed out by... Do you want to guess? Do you want to give the fans a second to guess here? Corsair, a.k.a. Christopher Summers and the Starjammers. Fuck yeah.
I want to know how he's alive, though. That's the thing that's really tripping me up, because, he died, in the whole Emperor Vulcan thing, so I'm really interested in, how Corsair is still alive. I'm not bitching, I'm just really interested in hearing that story.
Let's see, maybe he didn't actually die, it was a clone, life model decoy, it was a fake, maybe he came through time himself. There's a couple possibilities right there. What are some of the other comic or standard comic book tropes for getting out of death?
Dude, this is the X-Men. Lord only knows. They probably just found him under the school somewhere. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's happened before. You need an excuse. Claremont never needed an excuse. They're just back. Maybe he decided to jump out of heaven with Nightcrawler. Who knows, man? Who knows? But I'm really happy that he is back, and I don't know, I kind of really like the whole little exchange between him, Cyclops, and Star-Lord at the end of this issue. It's kind of a little touching, you know what I mean? This new young Cyclops is actually going to meet his daddy. I don't know, it should make for some pretty cool drama in the next upcoming issues of this.
Yeah, man, it was very touching. And I guess maybe because Corsair is technically supposed to be dead is why I didn't think of it before. But as soon as you see it, you're like, oh, why didn't I think of this before? This is the perfect thing to do. Young Scott Summers out of time with his dad, the relationship they never had, yada yada yada.
Champion stuff written all over it, you know what I mean? I really think that this has actually moved this weird little crossover with them and the Guardians of the Galaxy up a notch in my estimation of how much enjoyment I'm actually going to get out of this.
Oh yeah, man, I was getting my expectations way down on this event after the first two issues, but this issue brought them right back up.
Oh yeah, especially, I don't know, even before Corsair showed up, but I want to talk to the talking raccoon because it makes me feel like a princess in a Disney movie. That alone had me rolling, but then, yeah, all of a sudden the Starjammers show up, and I'm just like, what? But it's awesome, you know what I mean? And Corsair's back alive. I want to hear the story, but it's not really that important. I really want to see this drama unfold with him meeting this young Cyclops, and how this is going to work this time for these characters to meet each other.
Oh yeah, man, I even got a press release from Marvel. I think they're planning a whole series on this.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, it'll be Corsair and Cyclops, Space Adventures.
And that's the best name they could come up with?
No, I'm not saying the name isn't Space Adventures.
Okay. I was just like, what, did the Carnival Barker from Origins 2 come up with that for them, or what?
I only really skimmed the thing, so I don't know exactly who's writing it or what's going on or what the title's going to be or if they even have one yet. But I think that's what they're planning on doing.
Right on. That sounds very interesting. It sounds like something well worth checking out, so bring it on.
Yeah, so there's that to look forward to. And this issue, just the space art alone, the space art is beautiful. It's all full of blues and purples and cool colors, and I thought it was an amazing book to look at. It's got just the right amount of lights.
Yeah, and it's really, he's really boosted his character interactions. I really liked the way that the other Guardians were talking about Angela just hopping out of the ship to go kick some ass, and they're just like, yeah, she doesn't know how to dress for battle, but I really like having her on board, you know what I mean? Like, really endeared me to these new versions of these characters, which is a good thing, because I was a little hesitant to get involved in this new Guardians at first, because, I mean, I like Brian Bendis' X-Men, but he's never really satisfied me in anything else, and I really liked the Dan Abnett Guardians before this, so this really has me really wanting to read the previous Guardians books to this one.
As far as the banter, I think my favorite part was actually Raccoon bantering with the other Shi'ar ship. He's like, God, humorless as shit, this must be the Shi'ar.
Yeah. That and like the whole, I am Groot, yeah, we got a talking tree. Well, kind of. I mean, there's too much to pick, and I really liked that at first they kind of thought the X-Men were useless, but like Gamora and most of them, I at least think that X-23 is badass. So I mean, like at least like a couple of the X-Men are like moving up in their estimation, and I really like the way that they really looked at Beast and were just like, you're just gonna nerd out on us this whole damn time, aren't you? Yeah, probably. I'm sorry. I mean, a lot of levity.
Yeah, Beast almost kind of plays the fish out of water character too. Like he's the one. He's like any of us. We're like, holy crap! Imagine if I was on a spaceship and all that stuff. And he kind of gets to do that. And, you know, they have the line about nerding out. And it's a great characterization. Like you said, X-23 is just like, finally we can fight. Something I understand in all this nonsense. Hell, maybe she'd even make a great Guardians member.
I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, like, before she showed up on this, they were really shopping her around. Like, at one point she was almost going to become an Avenger. So, you know, Guardians might not be that far off.
Yeah, man. Dude, put her in, like, a female Fang uniform.
Yeah.
You know how Wolverine kind of wore the Fang uniform before? Like, do that. It's perfect.
Right.
But my favorite part about this book, I think, aside from just how well the visual art, like, fit the space tone, has got to be those cutscenes with Jean Grey. Now, this Jean Grey might not be destined to be the Phoenix, but every time she gets angry, I can literally just feel how, quite frankly, she has the potential to be something even much worse.
Yeah, I mean, like, she could be as destructive as the Phoenix without the Phoenix Force. I mean, like...
Yeah, man, I'm just this young Jean Grey getting way too much, way too fast, constantly stressed, constantly pushed to her limits. Like that line where she's just like, maybe I haven't tried hard enough. Like, you can just feel how badly she wants to let loose. I love it.
Right.
So do we want to go thumbs up or thumbs down and buy it or skip it?
I'm going to give this a thumbs up. This crossover has just gotten so much better just by this issue alone, and I was already kind of digging it, so buy it. This is going to be a good introduction to Guardians of the Galaxy for people that haven't read it yet, that maybe want to check it out because of the film. And this is going to be a bit of an important thing with this past X-Men and how they're going to have to deal with things in the future with this, how this Shi'ar trial turns out. So you don't want to miss this, so buy it.
I'm going to go thumbs up, especially for the perfect kind of cliffhanger that doesn't necessarily leave you hanging on for the story, but leaves you hungry for the next part. I'm going to go buy it. All the banter between the shipmates alone was enough to make this worth reading. Next, let's do X-Men Legacy number 24. I'm on a roll, and I want to stick with some good comics. I'll admit to being a little torn. So basically what happens here is Legion has had his goodbye sex with Blindfold, as, you know, meanwhile they're also fighting in the real world, because she has to stop him from becoming the World Worm and eating and ending mutant kind. We see the confusing messages that she's been getting. They're from Professor X in the afterlife, trying to tell Legion that he's proud. The world is basically ending around Legion. One way or another, it seems like it's all over for him. And he finds the Weaver, his last errant fractured piece of psyche, and asks, why did I never merge with you? Why you last? And I think they undersell this part a bit, but, you know, boom, like the big reveal, we see that this last part, that is Legion, that is David, that was him. And what we've been seeing from the comics' point of view is another fractured piece of the mind. It was from that point of view. I mean, is that not just David Lynch levels of twistedly brilliant?
Yeah, I mean, like, I was just so taken back by that. I was just like, oh my god, they sucked us in so far and made us believe that we were reading the real David's thing, and basically he was just another broken piece. He was actually pulling a lot of the other pieces together, but he wasn't the actual David Legion that has come before, which, I don't know, it was so brilliant, you know what I mean? Like, this wasn't the ending that I was hoping for or that I thought I saw coming, but Jesus, was this not just one of the most brilliant endings to a story arc that I've ever read.
So with newfound motivation and near godlike power, David can do whatever he wants. But so much has happened, even just throughout this arc alone, where we've seen, the evil anger unleashed upon the world. So many people have died, so many people have suffered. We see him start to try. He's like, okay, I can bring Abigail Brand back to life after she died in the fight. But then it's like, how do I decide what to fix and what not to fix? After all of this, who can live and who can die? And he decides not to make that decision. What he decides to do is basically erase himself from existence. Or not erase himself from existing, not to say like so much that he was never born. He still technically exists. But what he does is remove his presence from the timeline and then stores himself safely inside Blindfold's head, so in a way they can be together.
Yeah, and everything jumps back to right after Professor X dies, which was kind of like a really weird point where the first time I read through it, I was just like, what? And I was kind of a little pissed about it, but then I read it again directly after, and then I just realized how brilliant of an idea that this actually was that Spurrier ran with. I mean, just wow, Like you said, dude, it's David Lynch. This is Inland Empire, the X-Men version.
Now, of course, that might leave you with some questions, especially as far as the metaphysics. What does this mean? How does him never existing, say, affect the Age of Apocalypse? What was the point of all that? But Spurrier says himself in the afterword that, his take on this story, and I'm paraphrasing it, but it's very much a life is a journey, not a destination kind of thing. And I know that I, for one, was certainly able to enjoy it as such.
Right. And I mean, this completely was a Vertigo comic ending, you know what I mean? So I was really glad that they let him run with this art film style story narrative with it all the way to the end of it, and had a proper ending to it where they didn't try to church it up or, marvel it out. This was actually like an ending that fit this weird series. It was just perfect.
And it became all about the character, David.
Right. I mean, and like it really made you understand him, and now he's got things figured out in a different way than we foresaw, or we thought that he was going to figure him out, but he is finally a whole person in his own right now.
And it's a story about that person. My other big note is his line in the book about how it has to end to stay with you. Basically, it has to end to enjoy it, something like that. I think that's really the best ending ever, man. Like, the same way that this was an X-Men comic about X-Men comics, this was an ending story about ending stories, which I find to just be truly magnificent. Like, what he's saying is that a moment has to become a memory to fully honor it. It's almost like it treats you on mortality itself.
I don't know any other way to put it besides this is a beautiful notion,
Yeah, man, it's the perfect little metaphor for all our stupid lives, like, will the story of Scorpio Moon end with people saying, Scorpio was right, and some grand hurrah, and trumpets and music, and, the big final what's it all mean that comes after it? No. It's just gonna end. But that was the story of me. That doesn't mean it doesn't matter, though, or that it wasn't interesting.
And even that you didn't become the hero that actually saved the world in some glorious battle, that you had to do it by actually erasing yourself. And then that's the way you could be the most true hero that you could ever try to be in your life. I mean, that was just so creative, just so much different than anything else that I've probably ever read in a superhero comic.
I don't want to be a comic book snob, but with this series, I feel like you just either get it or you don't.
You really are missing out if you don't try to read stuff that doesn't have traditional narratives.
Okay, so X-Men Legacy number 24. Thumbs up or thumbs down, and buy it or skip it.
I have to give this a thumbs up. This is probably one of the most brilliant, most motivating, most creative, idealistic endings that I've ever read for a storyline about a tragic hero. And buy it because, dude, this is a brilliant ending to a brilliant comic. It may not be for everybody, but everybody should at least give this a try to see if they can make it into this kind of ideal comic book reading.
I've got to go thumbs up, too. Really just thumbs up all around. I mean, whether you're talking about the story art, the visuals of it, whether it's the lines, the colors, the letters, or even the fucking adverts that inspire people to read it in the first place, they all deserve their due. But really, this story, I think, has made this comic, it's made it something that's going to go down as one of my all-time favorites. I honestly think that this run on X-Men Legacy is one of the best stories ever told in the comic book medium. So if that doesn't tell you that my recommendation is going to be buy it, well then I don't really know how else to sell it.
Right.
Next up is all new X Factor number 3. So the mad scientist from last issue, he's now being recruited by Serval, who also has ocular implants installed into Polaris' eyes to use her as a human camera, which she of course doesn't know about.
Is it just me? Are they trying to really play this guy to be super shady to try to get you to think that he is evil right off the bat? I think that they're overdoing it a little bit. I really don't think that there's no way he could be as evil as they're portraying him. But yeah, he is up to some screwy stuff, and especially with the cat scene at the very beginning with her and Gambit really proves my point that, like, Polaris isn't all sane yet, you know what I mean? She is still batshit crazy. There's just something helping mask it for the most part.
Well, those are more interesting questions than I came up with. All I was going to ask is who gets to watch the shower footage?
Oh, yeah. Whoever does, do not tell Havoc that you did watch it, because he is really touchy on that subject, as you find out with his exchange with Quicksilver. I mean, and God, was that not hilarious? We have a connection, all right? Yeah, for a couple, you guys are like really like never together. We got a connection. Just, I don't know. That had me rolling. There's something screwy going on, but I think that they're trying to make us think that this Serval Industry guy is evil so much, and I think that it's the antithesis of that. And I think he's actually going to end up being a really good guy, because they're really trying to drive it into this guy's shady, you know? And like when they do that, it's usually the exact opposite.
They could be playing it that way, but honestly the way I almost kind of see it is that they're just putting all their cards out on the table. Yeah, so I mean, he obviously does some very shady shit, but it's not like he necessarily hides it. I mean, he laughs in people's faces about being evil right off the bat. He tells his assistant without her even digging. It's like, oh yeah, Polaris has implants in her eyes that she doesn't know about. Well, he doesn't try and hide it from his assistant, at least. Like, they put it all out there, and it's the same thing they do with Quicksilver. Like, Gambit knows that Quicksilver is a double agent for the Avengers, and flaunts it constantly. Like, there's no hiding that. It's like the reader knows, Gambit knows, everyone knows that Quicksilver is a double agent, and they're not really hiding that. The cards are just all out on the table. And they do the same thing even with Gambit. The big thing in this issue is that you see that someone has hacked Serval, and also while they were hacking the resources, stole a bunch of money, and you see that the person who did it was that Technomancer character from the Thieves Guild, and Serval can trace it back to Thieves Guild Island, and says, alright, Gambit, Polaris, Quicksilver, go attack this island. And Gambit's just like, oh, shit. But he never tries to hide it at all. Like, you know, right on the plane ride there, he tells them, yeah, this island we're going to, it's Thieves Guild Island, which I'm the king of. Like, the cards are always right on the table. Everything's always right out in the open.
Which I think that this is kind of a really good thing, because we didn't see any resolution between Gambit and Nil in that last run of Gambit, so at least there's going to be some kind of closure with this, and it was really cool because they finally brought in Danger, which is actually going to be involving some more characters that are supposed to be showing up as part of this team, so I really hope that, yeah, Gambit smacks the shit out of this Technomancer, and then, yeah, we end up having one of the coolest, craziest robots ever as an X-Factor member.
And I mean, it's already basically been spoiled in the solicits and, you know, so much going forward that Danger is going to be the next new member. But they do a really good job in here of, you know, having the Technomancer guy. Like, the reason he's so much more powerful now and can hack Serval is because he's holding Danger captive, siphoning off of her to increase his power. So you kind of, like, wonder, like, when they get to this island, you know, how conflicted will Gambit's interest be? But, like, as soon as he sees the former Danger Room program turned sentient being, Danger, being held captive, like, that makes it pretty cut and dry for him right off the bat, you know?
Well, that, and I think if it was any other member of the Thieves Guild besides Nil, the guy that really tried to get him killed in some kind of super powered prison in the last arc of Gambit's thing, I think that, like, he may have been a little more forgiving, but I think he's been looking for a reason to, like, slap this little bitch for a while now, and, like, this guy just gave him the perfect reason finally to let him do it.
Yeah, man. So like you said, making Gambit the main character of this, and revisiting things from his previous series, and also, in a way, kind of X-Men Legacy-ish, like the whole way it ties Gambit and Xavier together, like, wrapping that all around. They've really done a good job of keeping these storylines fresh, but using things that came before them, too.
Right, exactly, which is something that I always figured that Peter David would be really good at because of his previous run on X Factor, but I'm really glad to see that he's keeping it up in this all new and this new frontier that Marvel is attacking with this thing. So, I mean, like, he really is just such a talented writer, and this is a tale that he is destined to tell greatly.
If I have one little nitpick about this, possibly, and it might not even be a real nitpick, but whatever they put in Lorna's eyes as a spy device, it sounds like a technology, which to me implies metal. I mean, maybe it could be like a plastic organic kind of thing or something, but if it's metal at all, like any piece of metal, wouldn't she feel it in there with her powers?
Right, which makes me think that it's probably some kind of fiber optic, you know what I mean? There's lots of different things that you could make cameras out of these days, so like I think that, yeah, dude at Serval's too smart to try to stick something metal in Polaris's eyes. It's like definitely not going to fly. And it's kind of a cool idea. He must have been watching some Ghost in the Shell standalone complex because they had the exact same things like that in those. They called them interceptors, which is kind of a neat little thing that I kind of thought that they were alluding to with this.
Well, my most recent illusion would be in Smallville when you see that Lex Luthor had implants put in Tess Mercer's eyes, and you see that he actually did watch the shower footage.
Well, yeah, dude, but yeah, Lex is. I'm pretty sure that the main guy at Serval watches Polaris take a shower. I mean, I totally would. It's just they made him skeevy enough in this issue to not like have to throw the shower footage scene in as well. That might be an issue 4, you know, where he's like completely gets all, you know, kinky with it.
Oh yeah, man, I totally accept your point. Like, they've dirtied this guy up enough in the reader's eyes. Like, we get it.
And then, yeah, you end the book with him like sitting there talking to the dude like, so, do you got any special allegiance to AIM, or would you like to work for me? You know, it's just like, oh, you dirty butthole. You want to be a dude, don't you?
Yeah, man, I love that. And he even kind of threw Gambit's line back in this guy's face, like, you know, they're obviously evil organization, you know, compared to us. But yeah, man, thumbs up or thumbs down, and buy it or skip it.
I gotta give this a thumbs up as well. I mean, I'm so happy that X Factor is back. I'm so happy that X Factor is back in this style. So buy it. This is just on fire. This is a phenomenal series. This is an X book that should be read.
Yeah, man, I'm gonna go thumbs up here too. I think this comic is moving at a really good pace. It's got a good clip. It's got momentum. You know, this issue and this series, like, either way you want to talk about it, like, either way, I think it's been outstanding. And I'll say buy it because I think this single issue on its own was plenty entertaining enough to be worth picking up. But unfortunately, speaking of momentum, our next book up is Wolverine and the X-Men number 41. Another one of those issues that makes you say, what? What did I just read? So the Young Hellfire Club fiasco has been a big part of this series. I guess I can see why they'd want to revisit it for their last 2 issues before Jason Aaron hands the writing duties off to someone else.
Why try to do something cool when we could just regurgitate the same crap that's ran through this entire shitty series? Exactly.
So yeah, I found this issue to be decidedly undramatic. Story-wise, what happens here is Toad the janitor is fired for his involvement in the Hellfire fiasco, just as Paige Guthrie, Husk, happens to be coming back, despite her involvement. But remember, she was quote-unquote crazy. Toad and Husk almost rekindle their brief romance, which just made me think, wow, there actually is something sicker out there than Rachel Gray and John Sublime.
Yeah, man, because I was just, like, tripping about that, too. And, like, she was actually going to give it a go. She was, like, going to meet him at a Starbucks at 4, and, like, his dumbass wouldn't have fucked that up.
And I know we just name-dropped this, but it felt very Smallville again, where Toad has that last-minute case of, I can be a hero, and he tries to redeem himself in the eyes of the X-Men by stopping the escaped Hellfire brats, and that makes him miss his date with Husk. And when he tries to stop them, he gets mind-controlled into beating up one of them by the other member, Maximilian, who then uses him to escape, and poor Paige is left alone waiting at the coffee shop. If I was going to give this issue 1+, I'd say I'd love to see more of how Husk's powers are now tied to her personality. Like, you know, ripping off one skin to show another one isn't just a physical power, it also changes her mental state.
Right, that's kind of an interesting new evolution to her power, and that it's kind of cool if they would have did it in some kind of story that would actually, like, be interesting to, like, read about that in.
All in all, I think this issue was pretty typical of Wolverine and the X-Men. You know, you've got living land masses that cry lava, Pint-sized villains who are too young to even know how to drive, and poop jokes. I mean, that's what the series ran with, so I guess why not end with that? If I had one more plus, I would say visually this book is not too bad to look at. What they do here with the overcast sky, the blowing leaves in the wind, it's perfect for setting the tone that they seem to want. I think Paige looks very nice and every bit as sweet as Toad sees her as. They've got that classic X-Men leaping into battle shot, which was pretty epic for a book that's devoid of any real epic action.
Yeah, you got way more pluses about this thing than I did. I just was like reading it and I'm just like, okay, this is stupid, you know? Like, it seems like most of the X-Men don't actually even want to fire Toad, so why are they doing it? Okay, it's a stupid plot device for this, and oh boy, the Tween Fire Club's back, just who I was missing. 3 issues were actually almost readable, so it's about time that they come back for the end of this series, because God forbid they actually fight like somebody decent for the end of this fucking shit book.
Yeah, man, no surprises here. I mean, at best, it's just a traditional hero blows it with the girl kind of story. And as usual, told with all the nostalgia for Silver Age type silliness that they can muster. So unless you have anything else that you want to say about this, I'm ready to verdict it.
Yeah, let's go ahead and just give this one the bad news.
Johnny Alpha, lead us off.
I gotta give it a thumbs down. This series is just awful, and this issue really just celebrates the horribleness of the entirety of this book so far. Skip it, because this is a crappy end to a book that never really picked up anyways.
Yeah, thumbs down. I mean, maybe skim through it for some of the art, which I thought was pretty decent, but I just didn't really like the story at all. And I'll go with skip it. I mean, at best, I have to admit, I am a little curious how the story wraps up that they set here in the last issue of the book. But like I said, at best, maybe just read them both together sometime. Okay, so next up is Marvel Knights X-Men number 4. And I don't know, man, I mean, we'll see how you felt about it, but personally, I'm kind of checked out here. So the one girl who lied, we knew she wasn't a future seer, that she just told people what to do. And I guess the uncle, he's like a memory? Well, that's what I got out of it. And he's been brought to life, and he's running a life of his own. So I'll admit, I like how it gets even a little twistier. The girl who can tell people what to do, she tried to help that mutant we saw die in the beginning. She got caught by the bikers, and when she mind-wiped them, she accidentally kind of placed the suggestion that turned them into what they are now. But the Bring Back Memories chick, she's gone full-on bad guy. She wants to assault the town, kill Wolverine, and revel in the chaos. And now she's kind of friends with the bikers.
Yeah, I mean, it took a weird turn, but I have to say that it was one that I actually enjoyed, that I thought kind of really kind of turned this story around to something that I think might actually end rather decently, personally.
Well, I feel like what we got with it was kind of the typical build-up issue, build-up issue, build-up issue. Boom! Drop all the plot in the penultimate issue.
Yeah. But I mean, at least it's in the second to last, and it's not going to all be in the last issue like I was really dreading for this series. Because I figured like that's definitely where it was going, because they were not explaining shit in issue 3. So I figured like that they were just going to like drag this one out with a really prolonged fight between Rogue and Wolverine, which is, I don't know, it was still pretty lengthy, but nowhere near as much as I thought it was going to be. And yeah, they kind of really brought it around to something that, you know, you really understand what's going on now, and we're going to get the final installment. I still don't think this is going to be like something that, you know, I'm going to remember for the rest of my life as something that was epic of the X-Men, but for something that's not just a normal series that's running, this hasn't been too bad. The art really needs to pick back up, though, man. Like, they really are just getting skimpier and skimpier with some of the details.
Yeah, it seems like all I want to do is draw the psychedelics. Especially even like on the last page, you can kind of make out which characters are there. Like, you can kind of see that it's supposed to be Spiral and it's supposed to be Juggernaut. But they don't bother to fill in details or faces or anything like that. It doesn't matter. Like, as long as you kind of see that they're there, you know, we don't care. Like, so the art is kind of becoming another big nitpick for me, too. I mean, I like that it's a little different and it's creative and interesting, worth a flip through. But they've gone too far down the rabbit hole again, where they took an interesting twist and just went too far with it. And all this Wolverine versus Rogue shit, I mean, I get that it was all under the effects of mind control, but to me, none of it was particularly poignant or interesting. I mean, Johnny, you're the big Rogue fan, So you would know a little more than me, maybe. But like a lot of the issues she brings up, I feel like are things that the character is already kind of past at this point.
Right. And I mean, it's like those two have never really had beef about this kind of stuff anyway. So this entire clash between the two of them, it seems really forced for this series because Wolverine's been almost always very receptive of Rogue and helping bringing her back around. He's never been one of the ones to point out her scattered past or give her particular shit about it. That's more like something that somebody like Storm or Nightcrawler would have done, somebody with a more self-righteous attitude. Wolverine's always been way more accepting of characters like Rogue, so this entire thing that like where she would be fed up with him over just, him being mind controlled is kind of really silly in my opinion. Like if anybody should be having this throwdown, I guess it should be Kitty and Wolverine, but there's no way Kitty could actually fight Wolverine and, face to face like Rogue can.
Technically they could, because one of the devices they use, they have Wolverine and Rogue using the effects of this girl's power, like bringing up past memories to fight each other. So like they have like, Silver Samurai and Sabretooth and bringing up Miss Marvel and like having the memories fight each other. So it really could kind of be anyone, but yeah, it feels like it's written by someone who like knows a bit about the past of the X-Men, but is trying to force it into a story now in a way that doesn't work. Like they don't really get it, which is kind of one of my big issues with it. My other big issue with this book, and maybe I should have saved this for when we review issue 5, but all the promos and interviews promise something completely different than what we're getting. They made a big talk about how you had these rich mutants who lived up in a mansion coming down and trying to enforce their ideals on a tiny little town. The series is not really about that at all.
No. Yeah, this is kind of like promos and previews. This is almost like exactly what that dude Hope was saying that he was going to do with Phantom X Max, I guess. They preach a good fucking sermon, but they do not ever deliver, like the promised kingdom when the book's finally out. You know what I mean? It's just kind of like, okay, where was the thing that you were telling me you were going to write about? Because it's not in this, and this is like the second to last issue, so WTF, bro.
I've learned to live with fucked up solicits, but when it comes to, I don't know, I just expect a little more truth in advertising. I mean, if anything, I'd prefer like bullshit stock answers in interview over, promising something you don't really deliver. So, thumbs up or thumbs down and buy it or skip it?
I'm gonna give this, a mediocre thumbs up. I think I like the way it's coming about, but, get this in trade. Like reading this issue to issue is kind of pointless, and it kind of really drags on from issue to issue. It could have been a little shorter, so yeah, man, get this in trade if you want to read this at all.
I'm gonna go thumbs down. Personally, I'd rather read a mainstream X-Men book, even a bad one, versus this. And I'll go skip it, because after 3 issues, number 4 is basically an info dump of story, and then 5 is gonna be the last one, and then, the end. Picking up a little bit in my eyes is Deadpool, number 23.
Yeah. Good fun. Love the cover, man. When I looked at it, I was like, what the hell is that supposed to mean? But, when you read the book, you really get the entire aliens kind of theme that they have with the cover with the rest of the story, which I had a lot of fucking fun with this issue.
Dude, that was totally my first note, too. That you just got...
On all the alien stuff? I mean, dude, it was just so brilliantly done, though. I mean, like, it had me just cracking up. I mean, it was way more clever than the zombie stuff in the Night of the Living Deadpool.
Yeah, man, and even like you said, I mean, like the cover. Like, you've got to love the aliens-inspired cover, and I think for multiple reasons. I mean, number one, it is very truth in advertising. Like, you get, like, all these aliens references throughout the book. It's the opposite of, Marvel Knights X-Men. Like, this is total truth in advertising. And also, I love what the cover says about the series. Like, you've got Deadpool sticking out his tongue. It really symbolizes the mix of humor and violence that this book is all about.
Amen.
I love the silly bad guys in this, I really do. I love them arguing about whose orders to follow. Like who's gassed more people. Jokes about, I was gonna cook meth with you, and...
They really do. When they decide to break silly on this, they really go for broke. But I mean, like, I don't know. There's just something really rewarding about the humor that Foshin writes with these characters that it's really funny. And like, I guess you can consider it silly, but it's a little more relative than, like, say, the way Danny Way wrote Silly Deadpool.
Agreed, man. Agreed. I love how it makes me laugh as the bad guys are making jokes about bad guy assignments they could have taken and all that, as Deadpool is slowly killing them all. And then to top it all off, my favorite part, Deadpool even makes an aristocrats joke.
Right. Which is like, yeah, the joke that you're never supposed to tell, but, like they found a way to put it in a Marvel comic, which was really awesome.
And that must have been all Brian, because, he's the stand-up comedian. And aristocrats jokes are one of the most famous dirty things in all of comedy. For any of our listeners who don't understand what an aristocrats joke is, basically it's this thing in comedy where you go out of your way to do one of the most, violent or just, sick and disgusting, horrific things, that you can possibly think of. And at the end of the joke you say, I call it the aristocrats. Making fun of, the fancy people or whatever.
There's actually a very good documentary about it where most of the very famous comedians do variations of it. Like Trey Parker and Matt Stone even did a South Park short about it where Cartman does a variation of the aristocrats joke that's very offensive. But from what I understand, Gilbert Gottfried actually says the best one, which is really disgusting if you listen to it. But yeah, it's definitely something that I really wouldn't expect to see in a normal Marvel book that wasn't Max or Knights, you know what I mean? So it was really cool that they were able to pull it off.
Yeah, man, I saw that documentary too. My favorite was Sarah Silverman's, personally.
Yeah, she's crazy.
But yeah, man, they made a whole documentary out of just the history of this one joke. And to see it in this comic, it was just tops for me, man. So long story short, Deadpool kills everyone, gets compared to the bad guy, Gorman, in a not completely inaccurate way. He doesn't get his money, he blows up the ship. Gorman escapes with just a gunshot. Preston is going to get a new robot body with apparently enough sophisticated software that can handle a living consciousness. And even if she tracks down any of Deadpool's living relatives, he wants her to keep them away from his insanity, once again tying it into the overall story of this series, which just shows consistently that they do have a plan.
Right, yeah, they're really going to try to get into the heart of Deadpool in some capacity. I don't know if it's going to be one of the really silly or one of the good, the bad, and the ugly serious storylines, but I really hope that, it's a little bit of both. And, yeah, dude, especially the stuff with Preston and her son and her husband at the end of this with the, you think Mom's going to love me with my new hair? God, that was just so retarded, but I was one last laugh at the end of this book. Honestly, if you just want to just read something to laugh your ass off, get this issue, dude. It is too hysterical.
So, do you want to do thumbs up or thumbs down and buy it or skip it?
I gotta give it a thumbs up. It's one of my favorite, probably, issues of Deadpool I've ever read. And buy it, because the cover alone is worth the purchase. Just hang that on your wall. But, dude, you get so many good Aliens references, and you get so much good humor out of it. And this is a quintessential Deadpool issue where, even if you've never read the character before and you want to, understand Wade, this would be just a great issue to just read and get to know the character a little bit.
I just read the book yesterday, so maybe I'm still riding the high of it. But I feel like this is, my favorite Deadpool book ever, and one of my favorite Deadpool issues of my favorite Deadpool book ever. So, it's absolutely thumbs up here. I'm going to go buy it for a perfect characterization of Deadpool. He was never working with Coleslaw. Coleslaw gave him a ride. That was it. It was 100% Deadpool's agenda the whole time. Now, we've kind of saved the best for last. Maybe saying best for last is a little far, but we definitely saved a very strong book to end the reviews on, because the next and last issue up is X-Force #1. Now, there have been a lot of X-Force books, so the first question you have to ask yourself is, what kind of X-Force book will this be? Now, I've read all the promos and all the interviews leading up to it, so basically this notion of mutant kind is a nation without borders has been firmly implanted in my head. The idea is that every nation is implied to have some form of black ops involving superheroes or superhumans, doing some kind of dirty deeds. Or as Cable, spells it right out for you in the issue, Mutant Nation needs a dirty tricks crew, we're it. And that was absolutely, again, truth in advertising. That's exactly what this comic is. That's more or less been the mission statement of all the Wolverine-led X-Force groups, and that's the idea here. But there's just a little more emphasis on the idea of it being international.
Right, and I really got the idea that this is going to be a more espionage style, more of a spy group than Wolverine's led hit squads, which I had no problem with, but I really think that like this one is actually going to be a little bit on its own with the spy style espionage genre, aside from just the normal butchering like from the first couple Wolverine teams that we had, which were fun, but I want something new, and like it seems that Spurrier is really going to deliver that with some good gore and with some good fights. I mean, at the beginning of this book, when Cable's fighting that weird Chinese mutant with the dragon head, I mean, was that just neat looking or what, man?
Oh, dude, those were some epic shots, dude, and they had me sold on this comic before I even read it. I mean, what more perfect thing could there be than Cable with his robotic arm slugging it out with some giant rage monster, all done with this kind of like muddy-looking watercolor kind of look, really heavy on the browns and grays and reds, like really dirty and dramatic looking. And those epic shots sold it for me right there.
With that manga art, and like I really like the way that they're drawing Cable to look like an actual person instead of like some kind of giant cybernetic gorilla like he usually was drawn. I mean, I really like the way that he was drawn in Cable and X-Force, but in this they've even taken it farther, and like he kind of just looks like Ron Perlman with a robot arm in this. I see him as a person now instead of just like some big stupid thing like I used to in the 90s. So this is really bringing him around to actually becoming a character that I quite care for. I really just love this Korean guy's manga art style that he's brought to this book. I really love all of his versions of the characters. I like the new outfits. And then Spurrier's writing, I'd almost forgotten that Phantom X was supposed to be French, thanks to his, his Max title. They pretty much wrote him talking like Bruce Campbell in that. So when I was reading this, I'm like, oh yeah, dude, I forgot that Phantom X was French, because he actually puts like the different dialects in his word bubbles, which I love when writers do that. So that was another part of this book that really just like boosted it up. And I'm not really too familiar with Marrow, but man, is she just such a neat character. She's kind of like a schizophrenic serial killer version of Boom Boom, you know what I mean? And I gotta say that I'm very captivated by her.
Yeah, that description works for me. I mean, whether it's the way she's portrayed, the things she talks about, or even just the way that, Marrow looks. Like, I kind of got this, like, really angry, dirty Gwen Stefani vibe from her.
Yeah, like if Gwen Stefani was actually like a real punk rocker instead of like one that plays one on MTV.
And that was kind of a point for me, too. They have these scenes where, yes, Dr. Nemesis is in this book, although very briefly in the first issue. And, like, Dr. Nemesis and Marrow, I think they're kind of trying to make it the new Nemesis-Boom Boom relationship. Where,
right.
Nemesis needs someone to talk down to. And, like, especially if it's a little bit of a ditzy chick that works, I guess. I mean, that actually was one of my more favorite things about that series, but it's kind of a little point in this one. The big point that I wanted to make next, which you already talked me into, is that the international emphasis on this book is what makes Cy Spurrier the perfect man for the job. Like, as we've read through X-Men Legacy, Spurrier is British, and he always gave Legion, he always gave David that perfect, Scottish way of speaking, all the "ach" and the "oi", like, you always got that David,
Yeah, the use and everything, yeah.
And he does that with these characters here, like, he gives Phantom X, I mean, it's almost like, drenchingly too much, but he gives Phantom X that French flair again, and he has Psylocke say things like sodding, and he has Marrow call her a limey. Like, that, like, there was no one better to write an international book like this than Cy Spurrier.
I gotta agree. I mean, I really like that, he put emphasis that, these characters are not all American. Most people don't even write Psylocke speaking like a Brit, and like he really did go out of his way to phrase things like, a snotty upper-class British girl would say, which I found very hysterical. And, you kind of forget that mutants are supposed to be from everywhere, and especially, like a lot of these newer ones, they're from different places, but like they're usually just written, to talk like, your average Californian or, like no dialect. But, I mean, like, it's really interesting when a writer goes out of his way to be like, yeah, dude, this guy's French. I'm going to actually, like, just beat it over your head that, this guy talks like a frog,
I mean, technically, Phantom X only acts French. It's kind of one part of his memories that was put into his personality. I mean, he's not necessarily French, but it's in the character. And Spurrier puts it there.
And Cable calling him Garçon was too funny.
Yeah, man, like, those little bit of banters and bits are still there in them. And like you said about Cable, this is probably one of my favorite visual representations of Cable anywhere ever. And even the way that Marrow says he kind of talks in like,
He talks like he's saving ammo. He talks he talks like a gun that you're trying to.
Short bursts of rapid fire speech is like how he does it. Then he retreats back into silence mode and does the whole, grizzled future warrior thing with the camo pants and all that. It's really perfect, man.
I loved Marrow's narration with all the allusions to music, and her killing and her keeping her mutant power in check was part of the beat, and like how the other members bring the bass and the guitar in. I thought that was very, very interesting alliterations that only somebody like Cy Spurrier could write. It's not as poetic and as poignant as how he wrote David in X-Men Legacy, but there's nobody like really that intelligent or that kind of poetic in this team, so it would have been really out of place if he did. But I really liked that he had a character that somewhat spoke with some kind of metaphoric sense, to kind of keep with the aesthetic that I've really come to like him writing mutants.
It really reads a lot like X-Men Legacy. The way that David did those narrations where he was kind of talking to someone else who couldn't necessarily talk to at the time, and talked in this poetic kind of way, like Marrow's narration. It was the same kind of monologue, just tailored a little bit more to a different character. I mean, I really love that, because that's one of the things that I love about X-Men Legacy, is giving that really poeticness to the narration. So yeah, I mean, it's just like X-Men Legacy, but with a different character. So getting into the plot again, the first arc is spurred on by something called the Alexandria Incident, where a special weapon was used to blow up a conference, and a mutant is to blame. So both of those make this X-Force territory. Of course, the first step has Cable, Marrow, and Psylocke have to rescue the informant, who turns out to be Phantom X. Number 2, they go on to, try and get their hands on this device, using another special device that was devised by Dr. Nemesis, who I'm glad is still in this series. And Spurrier's written Nemesis before, and I think I'll do a good job with him here. The issue ends with the team discovering that the weapon and the mutant are one and the same. Basically the weapon used was a mutant.
Yeah, that they kept perpetually flying in these airplanes over the places where they needed to disrupt the technology, which I found really kind of a cool ploy to use, especially with doing a spy espionage type comic like this. And dude, how cool was Marrow when she unleashed her power and she kind of just became that cloud of just sharp objects flying into that plane and just like devoured the engine. Oh man, I thought that was some of the coolest looking mutant action I've seen in a while.
Yeah man, absolutely. That's one of my things on the important points to note here, is that last time we saw Marrow, she was depowered. But now apparently it's gone the opposite direction, and Marrow is actually so powered that she has to wear an inhibitor device over her head to keep her powers in check, and when she takes it off, she goes totally bone crazy. They don't really say, they don't explain that yet. I guess that's something that's going to be either left for later or never explained. We'll see how it works out.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of things that are kind of left vague, like what's wrong with Hope. She's in some kind of coma, which I think that might be some kind of weird fallout from the overload of power that Strife did, but we'll see exactly where they go with that. I really did like the way that they answered how Psylocke was going to end up working with Phantom X, and it's because it wasn't her choice to, he just kind of showed up in this book, which I really think that it's really funny that she still really hates him, and their banter with each other, especially with that meme you put up, was some of the best stuff that I've read in a while, man. Just good shit.
Yeah, man, pretty much every time that Phantom X and Psylocke talk, it's Betsy telling Phantom X to die in a fire. Or some it's just, I hate you, every other line, So, they don't really explain, how they can work together. The fact is they just have to work together, and they explained it by Phantom X being the informant. But yeah, it's not like they're all peachy keen. She tells him to go to hell in every single panel that she can.
Well, he really deserves it, man. What him and the female Phantom X did to her in the second arc of Uncanny X-Force, yeah, dude, he's lucky she don't stick her psychic sword up his ass, man, so.
And also left for later is the fact that only one version of Phantom X shows up here. So whether we're going to address his other personalities later, or maybe just sweep that weirdness under the rug, kind of remains to be seen. Honestly, I was not a big fan of the triple Phantom X's, so if they just decide to say skip it, I'd be happy with it. But
Me
we'll
too.
see, right?
No arguments here. If they just have the one Phantom X, I'm fine with that, and I really enjoyed him trying to explain Eva to Marrow. That was pretty hysterical.
Yeah, man, yeah. And I love that they're using Eva again. It's going to work totally well here, and I love Eva to begin with, so I'm happy with that. Another point to note is that Psylocke is still sworn off of using lethal force, while Marrow, meanwhile, is relishing every chance that she has to get violent.
Right. I mean, like, she even at the beginning doesn't take the shot when she's supposed to because she's having too much fun watching Cable fight the dragon guy with exploding fists. But, I mean, I'd have been right there with her because that fight was cool. You know, I wish we actually got to see more of that in the book, so, you know, I'd have been like...
Dude, I would have read an entire issue of just that fight. It was so well drawn and just so awesome and so perfect. But yeah, so Psylocke does accidentally kill somebody over the course of this issue already. And I kind of feel like if your weapon is a sword, like if you're using a sword to fight with, you're going to kill people.
I mean, especially a katana, you know what I mean? Like, those things are just made to, like, sever a body in half, you know? If you want to use a sword that you're not going to, like, necessarily kill with, you know, like, use a Scottish claymore, you know, with one of those, you actually got to, like, lift it up over your head and, like, to cut somebody in half, you know? I get your point, you know what I mean? Like, that's definitely not, like, the most non-lethal weapon. If she was really, like, dependent on this, she'd switch it to, like, a psychic baseball bat, you know what I mean? Like, you could still kill somebody with one of those on accident, but chances are you're just going to bruise them up pretty good, you know?
Yeah, or I mean, even just only use your psychic sword. But using an actual, real, physical sword in battle is going to kill people. So, I mean, we'll see exactly how that works out, but, I mean, they still have it that Marrow is, like, this violence fetish chick, and Phantom X, he has no problem just shooting someone straight in the head if he has to. So, obviously, this X-Force is going to use lethal force whenever it sees fit, and Cable has no problem, obviously, using lethal force and unleashing Marrow upon people. But, you know, once again, to drive the point home, the whole emphasis here is not on, yes, we kill people. It's more just, we do things off the books, internationally Black Ops.
Like, the people that accidentally or on purposely got killed by these X-Force people, they kind of had it coming, you know what I mean? If it wasn't these guys killing them, it would have probably been, like, some other gang or whatever, so...
Oh, yeah, man, definitely. And they spell that out for you right out in the book. They're like, yeah, these are dudes that do bad stuff. Don't cry any tears if they die.
Right, and I mean, like, I just got to go over how awesome the art is in this book again, because, like, I am a huge fan of some of these characters, and some of them have never looked this cool. I mean, like, even Phantom X, he looks so much cooler in this book than he's probably ever looked in any other book. I'm really not too familiar with Marrow. I remember when she showed up in the Blue Team books and stuff in the 90s, and I remember she was just like a psycho villain, so it's kind of cool to see her doing the spiral thing and kind of like being a half-assed good guy in this. I really like, you know, I liked Psylocke's outfit with the X on it from the last incarnation, but I gotta say this just black and with the red collar outfit she's rocking in this, it's really working. So I mean, like, this is some of the best looking versions of these characters I've ever seen, so I really like this Rakim dude's art. Dude, he is amazing. I really hope that he stays on this title for its entire run.
I kind of miss Psylocke in the shiny black leather, but they do the same thing here where, like, her uniform basically looks painted on. Like, you're looking at Psylocke and you're like, wow, like, that uniform perfectly fits her butt, her ass crack, and her boobs, like, completely. Like, it looks like painted on cosplay, but...
Yeah, you don't know how the hell she actually gets it on because it's, like, so damn tight, but I'm not complaining.
Yeah, no complaints here either, and actually, I'm a bit of a Marrow fan. I love her as one of the Morlocks, you know, like the sewer-dwelling mutants. And I remember there was a time where they tried to make her like the new Kitty Pryde of the new Jubilee. Like, she was supposed to be one of Wolverine's, like, you know, mentored young women, but, like, she totally rejected that trope and, like, was not about to fucking listen to Wolverine whatsoever. And there's a point where they get really violent with each other in the comics, and there's that whole thing back during the, one of the times that they brought Bastion back, like Zero Tolerance or whatever, that Marrow was kind of involved. And I really liked the character, and like Marrow has never been a very well-defined character. They kind of just like bring her up and use her for whatever they want to whenever the story comes up. But I'm pretty confident that Spurrier's going to do something interesting with her here.
So this is a very interesting thing that they're actually showing this thing through her psycho little eyes. Then, like, this is kind of, at least this issue, this is kind of her book right now. So that's got to be pretty interesting for, you know, somebody like you that's followed her to actually, like, you know, see somebody that's been used as a plot device actually kind of lead the way for at least the first issue.
Yeah, man, I like it. And I mean, the thing really is, like, I can't sit here and nitpick or complain like, ooh, is this treatment, is it worthy of Marrow? Is it telling the true Marrow? because there isn't really that much of a true Marrow yet. So it's kind of, one more writer's chance to try and make their mark on her.
And if anybody's going to probably do it and make her somebody that's very interesting while maybe even still being tragic, I got to say that Cy Spurrier is probably going to be the guy that's really going to pull this character out and make her something that you're going to want to see again.
Yeah, man, I agree. And it's like, we know Cable, we know Psylocke. I mean, like, if you need someone to narrate your book, especially because you usually want, like we always say, a bit of a fish-out-of-water character to explain it all, Marrow was a pretty good choice.
Right.
So, thumbs up or thumbs down, and buy it or skip it.
Oh, I really got to think about this one. That's a really tough one because there was just, dude, thumbs up, man. This is what I've been waiting for. I don't know if it replaces the other two X-Force books, and I don't think I want it to, but man, I really love this, and this is just hard-hitting. Art's gorgeous, so buy this. This is going to probably be one of the most epic X books of our time.
I've got to go thumbs up, too. I don't think the book has as much personality as the previous individual X-Force books did, but I still think it did a good job in the first issue of setting its own tone, especially with the visual art style, which once again, kind of like Cable and X-Force, kind of had a focus on like 2 or 3 real important colors to lead off the book. They've done the same thing here with this issue where they've got, I mean, whether you like it or dislike it, it's a very distinct, recognizable visual art tone. I don't know if they'll use it for the whole series, but for now it works, which is why my thumbs up. And I'm going to go with buy it, too. There's no reason not to. It's a continuation of the X-Force concept, but in a slightly different way. You just want to be there. Like, I would not want to be missing this. And that leads us into our previews. Now, the previews kind of go alphabetically here, so we're going to start with A plus X, number 17.
Man, I was like enjoying how long it's been since we had to read an A plus X book. I should have never like let it enter my mind because I knew that as soon as I was like rejoicing that I hadn't had to read one was going to be this fucking week. God damn it.
Yeah, man, I had totally forgotten about this title, to be honest. So I'm so glad that it's a monthly book. And I mean, I guess the solicits, like, they flip-flop. Like, we were supposed to get Brew and Iron Man. We were supposed to get Brew and Iron Man last time, but we got Psylocke Spider-Man. So even though solicits are still promising Psylocke Spider-Man, I guess we'll get Brew and Iron Man now. And then, of course, there's still the second Cap thing going on, which I feel like that should be over by now, but they've got to keep going with Doom as the villain to finish it off, so, I don't know, whatever.
I don't know where to go from that. I mean, I remember looking at the Brew and Iron Man thing, and I Brew on his little flying Segway scooter. I'm just like, I don't want to read this. I don't want to read this. So, you know what I mean? Is the best I can do.
No, yeah, you said enough, man, especially because that same sentiment leads us right into the next book to preview, Amazing X-Men number 4. Oh, God, I don't care.
Right. I mean, like, are they still fighting pirates in this? I don't remember. What happened? Oh, that's right. Beast is, like, gone fucking butt baby crazy, and, like, he's trying to bite Nightcrawler. That's blue-on-blue action. Like, I'm not interested, you know what I mean? Like, that's not helping anybody, you know? Like, we need to all get together. I don't want to read no blue-on-blue violence.
Yeah, man, that was our cliffhanger from the last one. Beast going Pharaoh. It looked like he was about to bite off a piece of Nightcrawler or whatever. We've already done Heaven and Hell, so I guess this issue is going to be more focused on Purgatory, I guess.
I hope Sam and Dean show up and shoot all of them.
Yeah, man. Once again, I'm just so glad that title is only monthly. It almost has me looking forward to Night of the Living Deadpool number 3.
Oh, is that already out, too?
Yeah, that's already out, too. And I'll give you a preview of our review of Night of the Living Deadpool number 3. I'm going to go thumbs down, get it in trade.
I'm probably going to, maybe give it a mediocre thumbs up because there'll be some funny zombie jokes in it. But, yeah, probably get it in trade.
Yeah, I mean, come on. Night of the Living Deadpool is a one-shot idea. I would take, like, a single oversized 48-page issue or just a trade paperback of it, but not a full ongoing issue mini. The best book I think we're going to talk about so far is Savage Wolverine number 15. Now we're talking.
Right, yeah, and I mean, like, I've been waiting for this because, like, that was a really good setup for this story arc, the whole Steinbeck, Depression, bootlegger story where he's going to be going after the French bastards that killed his friend and took their daughter for be a hooker. So, I mean, like, and this looks like, from the cover, it looks like he's going to be on, like, a steam liner, so, you know, that's going to be awesome. He's going to be fucking people up on a boat, so.
Yeah, man. Prohibition era Wolverine just being a badass, killing some bad guys. He'll probably teach the youngins a bit of a lesson. Savage Wolverine is the best and pretty much like the only real Wolverine title to be reading right now.
Yeah, and I mean, it's actually probably one of the best Wolverine books that I've read even before this for a while. So, I mean, like, this is definitely a book to be reading right now. If you're, like, interested in Wolverine, honestly, like, they should just scrap Origins and run what they wanted to do with that. And small little serials in this worked out so much better than, like, Wolverine's in the circus.
Yeah, I mean, I don't try and tell people how to write their comic books. I sure as hell wouldn't want comic book writers trying to tell me how to do my reviews. But, yeah, if you had just done Origins in bits and pieces throughout Savage Wolverine, kind of the same way that they did little bits and pieces of Wolverine's history back in Marvel Comics Presents, that would have been a lot better, in my opinion. But yeah, like I said, we did this alphabetically, but don't worry, that means that the best books are yet to come. We're also going to get Uncanny X-Men number 17. Now we're getting some real good stuff.
Hell yeah.
It's training day for Cyclops' First Class. Last issue was the Magneto lead-in to his new series, but now we're getting back to the new Xavier School for what looks like a student-focused issue. Basically, Benny got his solo training book, but now we're going back to training for the general... I mean, basically, it's Cyclops' first class as the renegade leader.
Yeah, and, like, the issue's called Middle of Nowhere, so I think that, like, yeah, he's gonna stick these kids out and make them do survival stuff, which is kind of hardcore, but, I mean, it fits with what his new battle motif is, so bring it on. I mean, I love these kids. I love Hijack, Goldballs, Benny, Tempest, you know what I mean? Like, this is a great team. Like, I would love to see these kids go up against the Archies and just fuck them up, because they totally could, so.
If you're gonna do a stupid kids versus kids thing, like they do with Wolverine and the X-Men versus the Hellfire Club, why not at least do Wolverine's First Class versus Cyclops' First Class? Now that is something I would read. And then finally, X-Men number 11.
Yes.
Will Madeline Pryor and Selene really come back to life? Will we actually have yet one more fake Jean Grey running around?
I'm pretty sure that they will bring her back in some kind of capacity because, honestly, the way that the Sisterhood is now, there's no way that they're going to be able to actually stand and fight this team of X-Men. If they were just going to be fighting like M and Karima again, yeah, this team can take it, but dude, not M, Psylocke, Storm, Rachel Gray, Jubilee, and then the reserves that they called it. They got Quentin Quire rolling with them. They got Helion. They got Pixie. They got Armor. They got some fucking muscle rolling with this X team. So there's no way that even with Archaea, they could really stand too big of a chance. So yeah, they're gonna need some hard hitters. So I really hope that they bring these characters back, which will be kind of fun. You know what I mean? To see them just a total like chick on chick just brawl. You know, like that's what I'm really hoping that this really just delivers. Which I really think that Wood will, you know, because like he said, and that he's going to just bring the action with the series. So do it, Brian. I mean, I'm ready for it. After some of these other X books I've had to put up with, man, bring the fucking action, Wood.
Yeah, so this is Ghost Part 2, which is happening in the middle of Muertos. Honestly, I don't care, man. The cover art looks so hot. Okay, so we're moving into the end of the show, and the first thing we're going to do is Spike the Punch.
Oh, yeah! Oh, hell yeah, spike it up, bro.
Spiking the Punch is a segment where Johnny and I each recommend one non-X-Men related comic book. And this week, Spike the Punch is sponsored by our radio home, PSN.
PSN Radio, the best in talk radio anywhere.
Johnny Alpha, would you like to lead us off?
Yeah, and I'm going to be spiking with something that I usually do. And this is going to be with Vertigo Comics Coffin Hill number 5. And this is an issue that I've actually been waiting for. This is an issue where they actually get into explaining the kind of magic that Eve herself is into and the kind of magic her family practices. And you find out that her family is actually into the black stuff, which they do for themselves. And she, after what happened to her as a kid, has actually gotten into protective magic. So, I mean, she's actually kind of like a guardian magician or guardian witch, as she considers herself. And you really learn what the thing that's possessing her friend Mel is, and it's a part of the darkness in the forest that's completely using her in a really messed up way, because you find out that Eve has the means to wipe her completely out, but she doesn't want to because she's afraid that her friend Mel is actually in there, which she actually uses to milk when they actually have this really cool confrontation between them, where she kind of like covers Eve in like this tar of her magic, and then Eve brings her crows out and it just like devours her tar, and it's just really just this visual, visceral scene, which I just fucking completely thought was awesome. And I don't know, I really like the way that this book is unfolding, and I really like that Eve talked to the family of the one friend that went disappearing when they did the ritual in the woods and when she was a teenager, and basically kind of laid down the law that she can actually probably bring the young daughter back if they work with her, which was kind of this really neat thing that's going on with the odd drama of this book. And I just gotta say, man, this damn comic just gets better and better issue by issue, and I love Kitteridge's writing.
And I love that every time Coffin Hill comes out, you spike with it. It's become like a trope of our show. I love that they do finally have that fight scene using magic between Eve and her friend who is possessed by the darkness from the woods. And you really do see Eve like use some real magic. And it's curious that Eve starts with a protection spell when she's supposed to come from a dark line of witches. And yeah, it basically kind of looks like visually like it kind of looks like symbiotes versus crows.
Right.
It was cool that they did it. I was a little disappointed that it was kind of one of those like typical kind of fights where they fought it out for a little bit, but then it has to be interrupted because Nate shows up and, you know, she has to run off, and it kind of like doesn't resolve anything. It's a real typical superhero kind of fight in a way.
I mean, it's like mid-arc, so like I didn't think that they were going to have the definitive battle, and not to mention, you know, like Nate is kind of like total like one of Lana's boyfriends from Smallville kind of idiot, so, you know, of course he's going to be like the kind of guy that's going to overreact and like act all stupid like they're having him, so. But I mean, the thing with his brother and the past that he has with Eve that they've completely developed more with this was very interesting, which kind of makes me think that even though he is falling for what Mel's selling him, that like he's going to completely come around and not be such a tool in the long run, with how he saw that like she actually cares for him and that she actually wants to protect him more than anything else. So I think that that's going to really play to some kind of strength in his dumbass.
I'm surprised that Nate's even still standing. I thought Mel sucked him dry. And man, I've got to say, man, I love that first page. That first page of this issue. It looked exactly like my childhood. Drinking and smoking in the woods. I mean, most of the sexy goth chicks that I knew didn't dress quite that sexy. But yep, that scene looked about right to me. Like, that was my childhood to a T. It kind of reminds me of this one time that I got really wasted on Goldschlager and Mountain Dew and smoked some weed and then smoked about a vial or two of wet and then wandered the woods thinking that I was the last of the Aztec warriors and that I had to hide from the rest of society which tried to hunt me to extinction.
It's pretty awesome. I mean, yeah, I mean, like, honestly, if it would have been, like, more from my childhood, there'd have been more mohawks, more tattoos, and stretched-out piercings, but I was right there with you. Probably not Goldschlager, more SoCo and Pabst Blue Ribbon with my friends, but, yeah, same drinks, same drugs, you know, and, like, definitely, yeah, in the woods, having a good time, you know, because that's the only place where you can really get out. And so, I mean, it's kind of cool to see that, like, no matter where you're from, like California where I'm from, and PA where you're from, and up in Massachusetts where Hot Eve Coffin's from, you know, like, all kids party the same way. That's gangster.
Yeah, man, definitely. And that makes what our third Smallville reference and our second David Lynch reference.
What kind of beer do you like? Heineken. Heineken? Fuck that shit! Pabst Blue Ribbon!
For real, man.
I can't believe that dude covered Eve in gasoline. That was scary, man.
Right, I mean, he's a dirty tweaker, so, I mean, like, I wouldn't put it past him, but I thought that she was going to do some kind of, like, gangster magic, but this was when she was young and stupid before she actually knew how to do that stuff, so it was pretty gangster that, like, Nate actually had to come down and save her, and then she had to save him a second time, and I really think that there's going to be something more to play with that junkie tweaker brother, and kind kind of why they're at odds, but kind of love each other at the same time, which I really like the relationships that are going on in this book. I really like just the evolution of the characters so far. I mean, I've missed Hellblazer since they canceled it and they brought John Constantine over to the New 52, so I'm really glad that there's some really good Black Magic comic at Vertigo that's this good now,
Yeah, man. Kitteridge is partitioning the information perfectly in a way that keeps this series very readable with every issue. I mean, getting back to the gasoline thing I brought up, it was just, I guess being a flashback, that nothing terribly terrible is going to happen to her. The character was still alive. I mean, I guess technically she could have been burned and healed herself with black magic. But anyway, just to see Eve be scared for once was kind of interesting because she's such a badass character. They even have a scene in this comic where she's finally taking on another magic user, and they're doing a superhero magic-inspired kind of battle, and Mel is kind of laying down the laws. She thinks this and this is gonna happen, and Eve's just well, if the third part involves us fighting, then that's awesome, because the first two won't happen, because I'm gonna kick the shit out of you.
Right. So I didn't think about it like that, but it was. That part of the book did stand out, and I guess that it was why, because it actually was a point where they showed that this little badass actually had a weakness at one point.
Yeah, man, but I love that you keep spiking with Coffin Hill, because I will talk about this book as much as you want to.
Right. I mean, I know that, I remember the first time I decided I wanted to spike with it again, and I was worried that you'd get mad, but I can't help it, dude. This is probably, aside from some other stuff, my favorite book going right now. There's this, there's Bedlam, there's East of West, and that's pretty much my favorites right now.
I think it's also kind of interesting to note that what we have here is a female-led book written by a female writer. Now, I bring that up because there's a lot of talk about if women are being represented well enough in comic books, and that is another point that will once again be brought up before the show even ends. But I think kind of the stigma attached to that is that people worry that female writers or female books are going to be all about portraying women as these Vestal virgins, and it's going to be some touchy-feely, stupid Lilith Fair kind of book. But Kitteridge is not afraid to just do whatever she wants here. Yes, there is kind of a love triangle going on, which is kind of part of the crux of this book. But it's not an overly romantic, teen movie kind of fair thing. Even in, earlier in the series, the love triangle revolves around Eve Coffin trying to give the dude a blowjob because the other girl won't. Kitteridge is not afraid to make it as absolutely sexy as it needs to be to make it work. It's not just oh, look, it's another fluffy romance thing. Girls can like sex too, and there's just such a variety of ways that, women or whatever might want to write things.
Right. This whole idea that people are posing about the female writers, it's just misogyny at its worst. And I'm looking at my shelf, and I got some really graphic, really kind of crazy manga that's written by Japanese women. And this whole idea that's perpetrated by this culture because assholes like Tony Harris, banging on girls that cosplay and stuff and trying to force them out of the scene as much as possible, which I think is horseshit. I want more girls reading comics. I want more girls writing comics. I want more girls drawing comics. I want this to be something that is not just something that, awkward men are into. You know what I mean? It's something that, you could actually maybe have a conversation and take it someplace with somebody that, the opposite sex, where they're not just going to be oh, I read Scott Pilgrim, like most of the chicks do nowadays.
It's people act like girls in comics is one trope that you can single fly in one way. It's almost even stupid in some ways to talk about girls in comics because it's not any different than anyone else writing comics. We're all people writing and reading comics, and to act oh, girls in comics is just this one thing that we have to, give attention to at one time. It's not like that. It's all variety.
I don't even pay attention, I could have been reading this for a decade, and not realize that Kitteridge, her first name is a female and then she's a girl, because this book is just written like a comic book, And the same thing with the stuff that Kelly Sue DeConnick writes, Pretty Deadly and Captain Marvel and even Avengers Assemble. They have, sure, strong feminine characters, but, when I do my writing, I write strong feminine characters because, I think that there's enough dude heroes, and in real life, if I was going to get saved by a superhero, I'd want like Psylocke or Rogue to save me. I wouldn't want Wolverine to like grab me in his big hairy arms and rescue me. You know what I mean? So that's how I view the superhero trope. And you know what's the problem with it? You know, like honestly, you're just scared that somebody's going to take your job, which isn't going to happen if you're actually a good writer. And this girl's a good writer. You know what I mean?
Yeah, not to mention the only person writing fanfic about Wolverine's hairy arms saving them is Cyclops.
Cyclops, or maybe the girl from Miss Marvel.
Yeah, maybe her. I mean, she writes Avengers fanfiction and Wolverine's an Avenger. But anyway, it also kind of feeds into my Spike the Punch this week, which is She-Hulk #1. Now look at what we have here. So far, even just in our spikes, we've recommended Black Widow #1, Miss Marvel #1, and now She-Hulk #1. That's 3 books that feature female characters. I mean, they're not all written by females, but still it's, 3 female characters in Marvel Comics, all #1s. You've got a white girl, a slightly brown girl, and a green girl, like all these books. And one of the things that I noticed right off the bat with She-Hulk #1 was how the same way that the X-Men are kind of a metaphor for racism in comic books, She-Hulk was kind of a metaphor for sexism in comic books, because the first thing that happens in She-Hulk #1, She-Hulk goes for her yearly review as a lawyer. Jennifer Walters is a lawyer. She's a superhero who also happens to be a lawyer. That's her thing. And they say to her, She-Hulk, we didn't hire you because we thought you were a good lawyer. We hired you because you know superheroes, and we wanted Tony Stark's patents, and we wanted superhero-related stuff to bolster our business. So it's kind of like sexist in the same way, but like with a slightly different thing. It's like, oh, we don't really give a shit if you're a good lawyer or how many billable hours of lawyer shit you have. We just thought you would relate us to superheroes. That's all they wanted. And She-Hulk basically says, fuck you, and smashes their desk and quits the job. And then she gets another job that, kind of ironically does involve superheroes, but, like most people do, she goes and says, wow, my life is kind of fucked up right now. I'm going to go get drunk about it. And she goes to a bar, and just like there are cop bars, firefighter bars, like biker bars, like, bars that certain kind of people frequent, she goes to a lawyer bar and gets hit up by this girl who wants her to settle a case that involves Tony Stark. Basic idea being that Tony Stark, one of his, like, subsidiaries, like a Tony Stark-related business, had some unethical practices that related to owing this guy who was technically a supervillain, which means he probably doesn't deserve the money because you can't get money off a crime. But, still the family is suffering. You've got the wife, you got the kids, and they've got no money. She-Hulk kind of handles it. But one of the cool things here was that they don't try and make it, like, necessarily just a straight-up superhero comic. It's a superhero doing real human things. In some ways, She-Hulk #1 was almost kind of like a legal procedural.
Right, I got that as well. Yeah, we got a lot of vigilante books, but she's actually fighting for justice within the actual justice system, which I find very, very kind of ironic for a comic book, you know what I mean? And it's something that they couldn't have pulled off in the past, but now that there's different reader bases and stuff like that, I think that this could be a very, very interesting little book, and I'm glad you spiked with it. I love the art style. It really reminds me of the Hernandez brothers. I really like the indie art style, and I gotta say, like, dude, like, I understand that they were unhappy with her performance with the first firm, but would you really fuck with somebody with the name Hulk in their name? I mean, I know she's the She-Hulk, but she's still Hulk, man. Jesus. You don't piss somebody with the name Hulk in their name off, dude. Come on, man. They're lucky she just broke their desk.
Yeah, and as soon as they went on and on about how expensive the desk was, it came from Madripoor, and I mean, technically, coming from Madripoor means the desk was probably not all it was built up to be, because Madripoor is a criminal operation, but as soon as they talked up that desk so much, I was just like, yeah, one way or another, that desk's getting smashed in this issue. And 2 reasons that I spiked with this. One of the reasons being, like, I often bring up that comic books aren't for kids anymore. Like, not most of them anyway, but usually it's because of sexuality or violence. But being mostly like a lawyer procedural kind of thing, like, this is another one where it's not really a comic book for kids. Like, I wouldn't give this to a 6-year-old girl and be like, here, check this out, you'll love this, because it's full of, like, legalese and lawyer crap that you wouldn't really understand, but it makes it a smart comic for adults in a different way.
Right.
Than say like a Zenoscope book or something, for example.
I don't think anybody's ever called a Zenoscope book smart, but yeah, I get.
Well, I mean, they've called Zenoscope books adult.
Okay, yeah.
Is what I was going for. And one of the other reasons that I spike with it is because just like Black Widow #1 was, and just like so many issues of Uncanny are, this was basically a one and done. Like, this one issue was one complete story. They set up how She-Hulk is going to get a new practice. Quits her practice because it treated her unethically, and then she takes this one case, and while she doesn't ask for any money for it, the girl kind of gives her money anyway, and she uses that money to set up a new practice, leading us into the series.
You gotta love something that, can wrap up, it can launch something, get you enticed into it, and wrap it all up in a single first issue of all things. So, I mean, like, I gotta admit, dude, this was a great spiking, and I was really interested in this since I've heard it announced, so, like, I'm really glad that we got to talk about it on the show.
And I gotta admit, Marvel kind of has their ass covered because they reboot and restart and technically cancel so many books anyway that it's like, oh, if none of these female-led books make it, they can say, oh, look, we canceled it, but hey, we cancel every book after 12 issues anyway. But that's just me harping on Marvel. But yeah, that's my Spike the Punch for the week. And now we're going to move into our final segment, Too Cool for School. And Too Cool for School is sponsored this week by one of our many homes on the web, comicbooked.com.
Man, this is Kevin Smith, and you've been comic booked.
Johnny Alpha, who did you think was too cool for school this week?
Alright, and this is going to be really weird for me because I've never liked this character too much, but I gotta say, dude, this new Cable in this X-Force is too cool for school. The way he kind of lays down the law as the wise old, drill sergeant with this new team. Like, I don't know, I really just have a lot of respect for him now, which I've never had before. So, yeah, dude, Cable in this new X-Force book is too cool for school.
You think you're too cool for school?
And my too cool for school this week goes to Deadpool. Like I kind of said in our verdict segment, Deadpool never planned on playing along with Coleslaw or S.H.I.E.L.D. or any of those fuckers. He wanted his money, that was it. He was trying to get his money, he didn't get his money, so he blew everything to hell. And that's just Deadpool. And that's why dude was too cool for school this week. I want to thank you all for listening to our podcast, and don't forget that our social media home is www.facebook.com/allaboutxmencomics podcast. That's where you can find us hanging out. I hope you stop by and maybe give us a like, and more importantly, just join in the conversation, because the reason that I do this, and the reason I suspect that Johnny Alpha also does this, is because we just like talking comics with people.
Pow pow.
So, whenever you decide to listen to the All About X-Men Comics podcast, we thank you for doing so, and we'll see you next time you play us.